Welcome, everyone, to episode 20 of the Glimmer Gang podcast. I'll be hosting today. I'm Spencer. Teddy and Blake could not make it today, but I do have with me Sean.
Yo, yo.
And we have a very special guest today. We have Warp John, who placed second in the Denver PPG Lorcana tournament, the first major tournament that we have seen. So we brought him along just to get his input on the overall experience. So, John, do you just want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. So, hey, I'm John. I have been playing TCGs for almost 2 decades now, and competitively for about a decade. Magic to, the more recent modern game as recent as Lorcana. And I have lots of tops in pretty much every game I play. So I consistently do well at tournaments, and I am a tournament grinder. I play test, I go to tournaments, and that's how I have the most fun in games.
Awesome.
Man after my own heart. I love that.
Well, that just well, that actually brought something up like I wasn't thinking about. If you're really seen, there was a lot of talk coming into Lorcana that there wasn't really going to be much of a competitive scene. So what made you, as a competitive player, want to dive in this early?
Set one formats of games intrigue me. I'm really good at them. One that recently came out and died over COVID was Argent Saga, when ARG tried to make their own card game. I topped 10Ks in a row in set one format, and before it died during COVID. And I just really like set one formats. I find them wide open, and I'm very good at busting metas.
Cool, man.
You there, Sneaky? Okay. Sounded like you cut out.
Yeah, the audio wasn't picking up for some reason. I moved closer to my mic, so hopefully it's not going to be an issue now. Have fun, Blake. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about, your experience, going into Denver, the preparation, what you expected to see from the meta, and kind of why you made some of the decisions that you did.
Yeah, so I expected if people were to the point of the meta where I'm at, they would just be playing purple red. I don't expect everyone to have all the cards for that, so I expected kind of a diverse pool. That's actually what happened to my play group as well. Three out of three of us made top 8. Everyone who was on my small little team I brought with me made top. One of them, Ryan Miles, got top 4 with green purple, and then my other friend Bramont got top 8 with steel purple. If we had access to 3 red purple decks, we would have been on 3 red purple decks. But we just didn't have access to the cards for all of that, so we made what we could. And preparation, it was just primarily testing. I pretty much determined that I think purple red is the best, and that steel yellow, what won the event, is an aggro deck that can just high roll randomly and just like steal games and can always it no matter what. I think that deck can always high roll an event.
It's fair. So we didn't really get to, saw us fall on the event as it went, and you didn't make it on stream. The very end. So, the first couple of rounds of the tourney, what did you wind up facing?
Yeah, so I played 6 Swiss rounds. I won all of them 2-0 except for the mirror match, which was a draw. So I ended up being 5-0-1 with no losses on the day at all, not even in a single game. And it was 3 purple decks. That deck was very popular at that event. I think people think it's favored against purple red. I disagree, and my tournament results disagree as well, but a lot of people think it is favored for some reason. and then the rest was just green X aggro. One was one was green white aggro or green amber aggro, and the other it wasn't green aggro. It was like an amber purple aggro list. It's the one that made top 8.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, just the Lilo.
But it was
Maleficent.
pretty smooth sailing.
Um,
I think he was on not even Lilo or Maleficent. I think he was on more like a mid-range kind of approach.
Interesting.
But the Swiss rounds were stupidly easy. Red purple just rolls through most of those decks like they're not real.
Okay. Yeah, we saw. It's interesting that you said that there was so much Amethyst Steel because it's not really a color combo that's been getting.
Oh yeah, sorry. Steel purple was what I saw in front of.
To me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people
I
have
agree
this
with the mirror
mindset
match
that
with
it
Ruby
beats.
Amethyst. I'm not sure. Yeah, sorry. That's what I was saying. Like, I hear where you're saying like people think that it has a good matchup against Ruby Amethyst, but I just don't see why. Like, what are your thoughts on why people would think that would be a favorable matchup for them?
Yeah, so I think they think that if you pop the mirror with Beast, that like, oh, you win the matchup, you have mirror and they don't have mirrors. But in my experience, and this is also the reason I'm on like 2 BLT and one Ursula, 4 Elsa, like my threat density in my list, it's also one of the reasons I was on 67 cards, is in that matchup, you just play big dumb battle cruiser tap out style control. Like you're not doing anything other than like any other tap out style control deck in any other card game's history would have ever done, where your bombs and your threat density are just so much better. It doesn't matter if they're drawing 4 or 5 cards when their cards aren't relevant and your cards are just massive and require 2 to 3 cards every time. And that's how that matchup pretty much played out every single time. I 2-0 swept every single one of them in the Swiss.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I mean, the top end of the Ruby Amethyst just so much stronger. You get so much more value out of them. And with I can see where people are coming from with the Beast into Mirror and trying to deny that, but there's so much draw in Amethyst already that this is me. People are probably gonna hate me. Mirror is overrated. Like, I understand it can be useful late game when you've got a lot of ink and you're digging for stuff. I know at least in one game, like you dug for a Dragonfire that saved you, which is pretty awesome. But I just don't think that denying the mirrors cripples the deck. I personally think the Pocket Rotches would be a bigger target for Beast. Yeah,
you also overload especially if you're on a list like mine where you're on like 3 mirror, a cauldron, a shield, 2 watch, you really overload their item destruction. They don't really have enough beasts to actually deal with all your relevant threats. And a lot of times, especially if I had multiple mirrors, they're kind of just forced to pop everything else around them because they can't deal with a mirror anyway. So I'll still be drawing.
That's fair. John, any thoughts or questions about
no,
Denver?
I'm just enjoying the insight at this point. I got one quick question about Denver, I guess, is so the build that you walked through the doors with, was that optimized for you? Because there's a lot of people in the community speculating that a lot of the lists that we saw were just what could be thrown together.
So my list was definitely optimized. I had access to 4 of everything I needed personally. So my list was very extensively tested. Like my 4 ofs primarily anti-aggro tech, and then my 1 and 2 ofs are primarily against mid-range and control because the game's going to go longer, so I can afford to play them. I also liked how my list was. So I think there are a lot of people trying to cut down to 60 cards in red purple, and they're doing one of a few things to the deck that ruins it. One, they're either ruining their mirror match or they're ruining their aggro match because you can't really do both well with the amount of core staples you need in the deck. Or B, they're just destroying their threat density and removing their top end, so that steel purple might actually be a favorable matchup into them because they don't have enough top end to actually be threatening relative to the list like mine, which just runs a massive amount of top end with 4 Aladdin, 2 BLT,
Yeah.
4 Elsa, 1 Ursula. It just keeps going. My top end is just way more, and I also have a better ink ratio while still maintaining. I think it was either 19 or 20. I don't remember off the top of my head. I ran 19 or 20 on inkables, which I used to run like 18 at 60, and I realized I did not like that ratio because I would get stuck at 6 very often and be dead, where 1 more ink would have fixed that. So I like the ratio quite a bit better at around 64 to 67, but only bumping up my inkables count. The big example of that is I wasn't playing small Aladdin prior, but I liked him a lot during the event, especially because against aggro, he is just nuts. Turn 5 Aladdin was absolutely insane against the green aggro list and the yellow-purple mid-range list. But against every other matchup, he's just ink, which is fine. That's the same thing with the broom package. Like all the broom package is just ink against the non-mirror, which is exactly where you want your tech slots to be in this kind of game, especially as there's no sideboard. So if you have a bunch of inkable slots that swap out between matchups so that you still maintain a high ink count and playable count, it keeps the deck flowing very well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you think other people's lists were optimized from what you could tell?
Cool.
So I was going to say, for other people's list, that yellow steel list that won was actually surprisingly close to my yellow steel list. It was like 6 cards off. I'm on 4 Lantern because I like the consistency there, and I'm on 2 Cinderella, the 4-drop that can sing a 5-drop, just more consistency on like the turn 3 off of Lantern to try to hit a song on turn 4.
Sure.
But our lists were very similar. I think that deck is probably the second best deck in the format. I've said it for a long time on the Lorcana HQ server as well, is that the yellow steel, it's more of a combo deck than an aggro deck. That deck, if you have the highest potential in the game for just making it not a real game. Like, you're just going to walk over people. So I don't think the deck is consistent, and it will probably do more poorly at a large event, but there's always the possibility that it just high rolls every game and you just like curb stomp any event. And that deck will always have that potential. I just don't think it's as consistent as purple red at beating everything.
That's fair. So with it topping though, do you think that there's going to be a bit of a meta shift more towards that style of us? We might see more mid-range decks come into play to counter it, going into, say, Miami.
Yeah, so I actually think steel mid-range is very favored into that deck when played appropriately and built appropriately. I think that deck has a very hard time dealing with any form of steel mid-range / control. I think steel mid-range will see a resurgence. It was already big at that event, but I think more refined lists will be more popular. I'm also going to be moving to 4 Befuddle myself, probably, in my purple red list. I just want to answer Lantern on turn 2 and set their tempo back so they don't get a ridiculous tempo lead on me.
Yeah, that's a good move. I definitely think people have been sleeping on Befuddle way too much.
Yeah, it's just the fact that it hits items makes that matchup. Sure. If it didn't hit items, I wouldn't play it at all. But hitting items is actually just massive in that matchup. They can't turn 3 Rockstar you, which is absolutely huge.
Another quick question about your deck and the choices. The two goofies. What what inspired that choice?
Yeah, so I am probably cutting Queen out entirely. I know it's going to be a hot take, and people are gonna. It's pretty controversial because some people are playing like 4 queens, and a lot of people really like. I found Queen really bad into the mirror match because it makes Maui a real card, whereas otherwise Maui is not very good in the mirror match. It also was pretty slow into aggro, and especially the green aggro variants I've been testing against. I don't really have time to play a 5 drop and then draw a card with it when I'm trying to stop them from killing me. And I found, and then the matchup Queen is good in, which is like Steel mid range. I think I already beat Steel mid range like every time as long as I play appropriately. So I just didn't think I threw in 1 queen just in case, but it's probably you're probably going to see me at 0 queen in Miami most likely. I just didn't. I don't think it's good enough. I don't. I think mirror is just better for what you want it to do, which is not die and removal in the matchups where you really care about that much card draw. And then Goofy served a critical point for a few things. In the mirror match, he was pressure, where they can't actually use their Mauis or their Rafikis to deal with it. They have to use hard removal, and that usually soaks up the removal that comes out for Mickey BLT. And then against aggro, green aggro, he eats the Pongos, he eats the Tinkerbell. That's the other purpose. I considered Jetsam, but I wanted something that also could apply pressure and control mirrors. Whereas Goofy is a 3/4 flyer that makes him just the right size to be annoying against steel and really good in the mirror where they can't answer it without their own evasive or hard removal.
It's really good points. I actually like that because I hadn't considered Goofy in the deck, and I hadn't seen any of the other lists running him. So the other big question I have: one Jafar.
Yeah, so
Like
my 4-drop
what's the
slot.
thought process there?
So my 4-drop slot was it's always been changing. I played like 4 Jafar when I wasn't on the Mickey package, and then I got to 2 Jafar, 2 Mickey. For this event, I was going to play. It was between. I had like 3 cards set out, and I was like, all right, what's going to be my 67th card? The second Jafar, the first Queen, or I don't even remember what the other option I think it was like the second Ursula. And I was like, all right, guys, I think I'm just gonna go with the Queen and try it out, see if 1 queen is actually like reasonable. But it was pretty much ink almost every game. So I think I wish I had just a second Jafar, to be honest. I like Jafar a lot. Card was solid. It does what it's supposed to do. Just be 2 lore, 5 toughness, and be able to kill a lot of things. I've considered even Zeus. The only problem is he's uninkable, so that really, really, really hurts him. But I really want I don't play this deck like you would normally play a control deck. I play it like I'm trying to curve out every single time. I'm trying to go. If they play a 1-drop, I'm playing a 1-drop. If not, I'm just going 2, 3, 4, 5. And then mirror is generally my turn 6 play, which is why I just skip 6 drops entirely because I'm trying to play mirror plus draw on turn 6 very, very often.
Okay, that makes sense. Were there any other
And I think the 3-drops
surprises in Denver? Talking about your deck, go for it. You can cut that.
I was just gonna say, like a lot of times the deck just goes 3-drop into 3-drop on turn 3 and 4. Like you're often holding Mickeys in the mirror or using them as ink in other matchups, so you're just kind of playing 2, 3 drops in a row very, very often. And Maleficent is fine on turn 4 as well. I mean, it just replaces itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then surprises in Denver. No, I'm glad all three of the people, myself and the two others I came with, we all made it to top 8. That was nice. I wasn't sure if we were all going to, but that was cool. Uh, Other than that, not really any surprises. Yellow Steel did the Yellow Steel thing. I don't know if you were watching the finals at all, but in the game 3 of the finals, he discarded 2 of my B preps with a whole new world. And like that, the game was just over because I didn't see any more after that. But even then, discarding 2 is just brutal. And it was sad because you guys didn't see this because it wasn't on camera. But I mulled 2 cards away and drew both those B preps off of that mull. So it's not like I didn't really even have a chance to play around it either. That's just the yellow deck, the high roll deck. It just whole new world sometimes just randomly wins games, which is part of the reason that deck can just wipe the floor with people sometimes. I'm kind of surprised it made it to finals, but if you're rolling hot, there's no deck in the game that's better than that deck.
Yeah, and then like if you
low roll with the whole new world, it just helps your
opponent out, it helps you.
Like it's always
the double.
Yeah, that's what happened to me when I was testing that deck a lot. Because I definitely think that deck is like really good, and I've been testing it since like day 2 of the full set release. I built. I was like, oh, a whole new world plus Ariel's there's got to be a really broken deck here, and I just couldn't get it consistent enough to my liking. I think the deck is very powerful. I just think it has a lot of swingy games that are entirely due to a whole new world RNG.
It's totally fair. Yeah. So
like, what do you?
What are to see in Miami? You're coming to Miami, right?
Yep. Already got my ticket and hotel set up. And I expect to see a lot more purple red. I think people will actually have the deck built and know how to play it. The deck is probably it and yellow steel, while being the 2 best decks, also were probably the 2 hardest decks in the current format to play properly. So I don't know how many people will be able to actually take them to a large event and go the distance with them, but I expect there to be quite a bit of yellow steel and purple red, and then steel mid range also to come up and catch those yellow steel players in the high tables out and call them out for being on steel aggro. Because one grab your sword, like one shift tank grab your sword, and that deck is like toasted.
Yeah. I mean, it's not much difference from like a Be Prepared.
It's the fact that it comes out on like turn 4 versus turn 7 is like absolutely a huge difference.
Yeah, it shuts it down really a lot earlier.
Yeah, I've tested that deck a lot, and my friend beat when I was testing early on in the format, because I thought that was just going to be the most broken deck, because I was like, how can draw 7 for free not be broken?
Right.
My friend just built steel mid range and just like beat the heck out of me like 7 games in a row, and I was like, all right, maybe this deck isn't as broken as I thought it was. There's a complete viable counter, which is just any steel removal based deck. But I don't expect much else.
So if somebody wanted...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if somebody wanted to make Emerald work,
what would you
So I think it's like, I think the Stitch, the Rockstar deck that won, is like a combo deck, not really a true aggro deck. It tries to assemble Voltron with its pieces and then combo off, whereas green is actually like what you would consider a fair aggro deck. It just tries to curve out and win the game by counting to 20.
As fast as it can, yeah.
Yeah, and I think green-red has a lot of power, but it's very RNG reliant because you're at the mercy of top decks. There's like 0 card draw in that.
Exactly. You have Hatter and that's it.
Yeah, and so like I think a similar situation where its power level is obscene. Like it can just draw these stone cold nuts with like Lilos and Simbas and stuff. But what happened to my green amber opponent is I just shut him down with Rafiki into small Aladdin into big Aladdin, and the game was over. And I think that's in general the problem with aggro, is like once you fizzle them out, they're just kind of top decking and hoping to get there and hoping you don't have the answers.
Right, exactly.
But I do like the green. So the green purple list, my friend Brian Miles brought. We actually built that literally the night before the event at like midnight when we all got there, and it turned out really well. That deck actually performed really well. He beat 2 or 3 red purple on the way, so he knocked out quite a bit of the red purple pilots with that deck. I think that deck is pretty solid. I would say it's probably the best green deck going into any future event. You just have tons of card draw and card advantage to back up green's powerhouses. Like Cusco is just insane. That card's ridiculous.
Yeah, Cusco's nuts.
Yeah. And then I think there's like a green blue deck no one's solved yet using like Eye of the Fates and all the ward dudes they have with like Cusco.
It seems like it, right? It seems like there'd be something there.
Yeah, I'm not much of an aggro player. I'm pretty much I play aggro occasionally in games, especially when it's good. And I used to really only play aggro for a little while, but I really like control and prison style decks. So I haven't really focused onto the green blue deck building, but I definitely feel if someone gets like the right green blue mix, they could spike an event. If you can beat purple red control and you also can manage like the other aggro matchups, you could easily spike an event with green blue.
I can see that too.
Yeah, I think the problem with Sapphire Emerald is that you run into the same issues you do with Ruby Emerald, where there's just not enough draw. Like, you've got to develop your brain for some filter, and then you've got Robin Hood.
Yeah, and Robin Hood, you can, but that's
it.
also just a cantrip, not really card draw.
Yeah,
same.
And that's, I think, Sapphire is probably going to be the least common color. I like the color Sapphire. I just think the color is like missing some really critical cards from being viable in a competitive scene.
Yeah, I really want to make Sapphire work because it's got a lot of really cool stuff. But like you said, it's just missing that. It's just missing the draw. As soon as it gets more consistent draw, I think it'll be okay. Cool.
What about an Emerald
Steel? Up too much aggro to move into a mid range to like deal with some of the other aggro decks, or do you
so I think
there,
there's like
with
2 different Emerald Steel decks. There's like this or 3 different Emerald Steel decks. There's like the mill combo deck, which I think is a meme primarily, not really a real deck. Then there's the mid-range Emerald Steel, and then the aggro Emerald Steel. And I don't think there's a really good aggro Emerald Steel list, because Steel doesn't have the aggro pieces like other colors do. I think if you're going to play pure aggro, you'd want purple or red or amber as your third color. But I do think there's some Steel green list that's I don't think it's quite tuned yet. I haven't seen a good tuned list show up ever on any of the Discord servers I've been looking. I've been trying to make one myself, but I just couldn't get it to really work. But there's probably something there. I really like the concept of shift tank into the beast that everyone thinks is bad. I think that is actually like really good into like
that's really good.
Yeah.
And I think that's like something that's really underrated. And the deck has grab your sword as well. You could also run like a whole new world if you wanted. I think there's something there. I just don't think it's solved yet. And I don't know if it's necessarily good enough to be tier 1. I think the only decks I would place in tier 1 right now would be yellow, steel, and purple, red.
Gotcha. Awesome, man. Do you have anything else, John?
No, man, I'm tapped out.
All right, cool. Any final thoughts from you, John? Just in general.
I guess I'll leave one final thought. I think something I see a lot in this game, and I actually just finished a coaching session earlier from someone who wanted to get coached, is that I think a lot of people lose this game in the mulligan and on their ink decisions in the early game very often. So if you're wanting to improve, I would definitely recommend like recording your games and just looking at your mulligans and your ink decisions and seeing how the game would have been different. And that's probably the best way to improve, in my opinion, right now. To add.
I like that. That's a good bit of advice.
Yeah, love that. All right, awesome. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Short and sweet this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. As always, check us out on YouTube, Glimmer Gang Podcast, Twitter,
Whatever else Teddy has going on. See y'all next time.
Bye.
You love to see it.
Awesome.
Thank you, John. This was a pleasure,
For
my
sure.
friend.
Thanks for coming out,
thanks for
John.
hosting me.
That was great. Yeah, I love getting your insights, and thanks for that little tip at the end. That was wonderful.
It's good stuff. Look forward to seeing you at Miami.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be there, so it's going to be fun. I hope to see a lot more players. I want to break like 200.
It's got to be up close to 100 by now, isn't it? Because it was like 80 something earlier.
Yeah. I mean, the pricing is insane. If you make top 4, you split a case. No cap, I don't believe, as far as I'm aware. I think they're allowed to take as much space as they want. So.
Dang. Yeah, I still got to get my interview with Eric done, the dude that's running it, Miami Eric.
Yeah.
He's a good dude, though. He seems like he's really into it, and he really cares that this thing does really well.
Yeah, I like what PPG has done. I'm so glad they actually took the reins, because I was worried that people wouldn't play this game competitively. But then PPG was like, "Yeah, we're gonna host tournaments." And I was like, "Thank God, one of the TOs I know is taking over."
I think that PPG jumping on it like that was super smart of them, because like people like us want to play this game competitively, and like it might not be everything to a TCG, but to a TCG that is a component you have to consider. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I definitely understand where Raven's coming from. Like, especially after playing set 1 meta, like they wanted to wait until set 3, but like the competitive drive for players like myself is just way too high. We want an outlet to express competition amongst our peers.
Yeah, my part of my on my schedule for tomorrow is figuring out my flight situation because they changed one of my flights, which messed up everything. So
now I gotta figure that out.
Sucks.
Yeah. That's what I get for trying to save a couple of bucks.
Yeah, I set up my flight as well already. Thankfully, Philly to Miami is pretty cheap. It's like $90. Just a super good price for a flight.
Oh, really? Nice. Yeah, mine were super cheap if I flew into Fort Lauderdale instead of Miami International. But then I want to take an Uber from Fort Lauderdale to Miami International, so I just had to pay a little bit more. But I actually used to live in Philly. It's a weird city, man.
I'm not a fan. I moved here a year ago, and I don't really like it, to be honest.
Where did you move from?
I was in Florida before that.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, I've lived all over, and I definitely prefer the South and not major cities. Definitely not a city person.
That is
Really
totally
fair.
See, I'm back in the South in the burbs now, and I'm like, kind of want to go back to a city.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who really
But
like city living. They will never go back to not living in a city. I don't know. I miss having a backyard and not seeing my neighbors at all. And here I'm like, it's like you're stacked like sardines in the city.
Yeah, I'm more of a visit
Yeah.
a city once in a while
That's
kind of
totally
person.
fair.
So what are you guys gonna bring to Miami?
As far as deck,
Yeah.
up in the air right now. I am not a control player, so Ruby Amethyst doesn't really entice me as much. So I'll probably be trying to run the antidote to that.
Gotcha. I do think there's like this. I didn't even talk about it in the podcast because I don't think it's quite anywhere near being good enough yet. But I do think there's like a Ruby Steel or like Ruby Amber mid range listed somewhere. It's being discussed in some of my Discord channels right now.
I
And I
believe
think
that.
that might
I know of
be.
a couple of people testing those colors right now. Honestly,
Yeah, it's being tested everywhere. I don't know how good it may be. I don't know. I'm probably just gonna stick with purple red because I know it's so freaking well. I have so many games on it by now.
You said Amber Ruby mid range.
Yeah, just some kind of like. I really want a just-in-time Maui into turn 4 Rapunzel. I think that's cracked. I think that's just absolutely bonkers and will win games by itself. Personally, maybe that's worse than just playing Lantern for turn 4 Maui, turn 5 Rapunzel. But either way, I want to ramp out Maui and then use Rapunzel on Maui because I think that's insane. I think Maui is like the most overstated unit in this game by a lot. I think the only other units that come close to being as overstated as Maui are like the Lilo and Maleficent one drop just because their lore count is so high.
Yeah, I'm currently running actually Amber Ruby mid range as my like for funsies locals deck, and I don't know, like I don't think it's that viable.
Yeah, it may not be. I just like I like Amber's card draw mins and their ramp. Yeah, I think the just in time is probably the most powerful, but a little inconsistent.
High rolling.
I also think there's like there's possibly like a Mulan high rolly red yellow aggro deck running around that runs like just in time with Mulan, and then you like do like Mulan Lafau nonsense or whatever, and like Lilo into Lafau is also just an insane turn 1, turn 2. I haven't tested it much yet. I just think it's possibly there. I don't know. I keep trying out tons of different decks, and I always end up going back to purple red. I think
I'm
set
probably
2 should change that significantly, though.
The play style. Oh yeah, set 2 is probably gonna change up unless it just gives the deck just even more tools. But I think a lot of these
Yeah, that's always the worry with card games is like I know One Piece has struggled lately with having infinite red decks just being broken, and then their ban list hit like 3 or 4 red cards, and red was still the best deck after that, and it's just a hard thing for designers to get out of. Is that like sometimes they just designed one color to be really, really strong or have all the removal, and that color is just really good.
Blue.
I really hope they give Yeah. I really hope they give blue an item that just sacks to draw a card. That would make Tamatoa so good.
It really would too.
And it would give them card draw. Like I think blue is missing. Like if they literally just had a cantrip item, the deck would be so much better. Because I think Tamatoa is already actually insane. I think that card is really, really like pushed on the power level. It's an 8 toughness unit that can quest for so much lore.
Yeah.
There's just no good items around it right now.
Yeah,
Really,
give it a set or two, and it's gonna be nuts.
yeah, we're trying this blue purple shell with it now because the items are actually good. Like you get watch, you get cauldron, you get mirror, and you can ramp, which makes mirror better. And you also get like fish bones, but like there's nothing to return off Tamatoa. He's just he's like Bell 5 through 8 in that deck basically. Like you're just playing him because he taps for a done. But I still don't think he's quite good enough yet. Oh, I'll put you guys on some tech that I haven't really shared because y'all may like this. I think the apple might be good enough as a 1 or 2 of in red purple.
I could see it. Yes,
Like,
just
I
to hit
really
those,
want
to
to
hit
blow
them
up.
Rapunzels and stuff, man.
It hits Rapunzel, it hits Ariel, which is a big
yeah,
one.
it's
Like
Ariel,
hitting the 3-drop Ariel when you're on the play is
Cinderella,
massive.
people are running that.
Yeah, and then it also functions as like a 1-drop Elsa to combine with your Maui and stuff to just answer stuff that isn't princesses. But I think I may end up on 1 or 2 of that. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to test it out for sure and see how bad it is in other matchups. Being uninkable is really awful, but it does put in so much work against Ariel. Just being able to kill their Ariel when you're on the play on turn 4 like should win you that matchup hard. Whereas Steel, they can just like smash Ariel every time, which is one of the reasons I think Steel is so favored in that against that deck is they just always should smash the Ariel and they should mulligan heavily for smash to hit the Ariel.
That makes sense.
All right, I have got to walk my dog now. She is very not happy that I haven't walked her.
All right, later, man. Thanks
See
for
ya.
coming out.
Peace. Yep, thanks for having me.